Well, look at you being all productive. Knock it off. Today we're looking back at the NFL draft and we'll discuss how it affects your fantasy football teams. Hopefully, we'll have a little fun in the process. We've already done a bunch of these, breaking down every division. This is the NFC North. Welcome to Shut Up Football. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus. That's Kevin. Whose draft just won the NFC North? And whose was a recipe for disaster? That's called a cliffhanger, y'all. One I will not follow through with. It's time to flick the Windy City's bean. Chicago Bears. The Bears grabbed running back Roschon Johnson in the 4th round out of Texas. He's 6 foot, 219 pounds, and has a very healthy RAS. The Bears' depth chart includes Khalil Herbert, D'Onta Foreman, Travis Homer, and Treston Ebner. I loved Khalil Herbert coming out of college, and when he fell to the Bears in the 6th round, I didn't care. I was still going to grab him in fantasy. He showed pretty well so far, and with David Montgomery gone, the starting job appeared to be his. But if you're a Khalil Herbert manager, you're very nervous right now. And if you're not, you fucking should be. They signed D'Onta Foreman this offseason. He signed a 1-year deal for about $2 million. They signed Travis Homer, a 2-year deal for $4 million. My point is the Bears are taking a very low-cost, low-commitment approach to the running back position, which, honestly, is the smart thing to do. Roschon Johnson only has 4th-round draft capital on him. Nobody here is guaranteed anything. It's going to be a running back by committee here, and a lot of people think that D'Onta Foreman is going to get the nod as the lead back. I don't. I think Khalil Herbert is going to get slightly more, but not for long. If you can, look to get out from under Herbert the first chance you get. He has 2 good games, sell. Unless Roschon Johnson shows a monster preseason, I think he sits out most of his rookie year. But he has the potential to take over this backfield next year. Foreman and Homer could be going after this year. Herbert will be at the end of his rookie deal next year, and if they can't keep him at low money, based on what they're showing me, they're likely to find another low money option, which could mean another running back drafted to join Roschon Johnson, but I'm not worried about that yet. You could hold on to Herbert just to see where he ends up in 2 years, but he'll be a 27-year-old 6th-round draft pick by then. At best, I think he'll be in a running back by committee situation somewhere else. Mock drafts currently have Roschon Johnson going in the 3rd round of a 12-team league. That's in front of fellow running backs Tyjae Spears and Chase Brown. No hesitation there. Draft Roschon Johnson. The Bears grabbed wide receiver Tyler Scott later in the 4th round out of Cincinnati. He's 5'11", 185 pounds, and ran a 4.44. His tape didn't wow me, but consider the Bears' depth chart. DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, Velus Jones Jr., and a bunch of guys. And the a bunch of guys is just names like Equanimous St. Brown and Dante Pettis. I don't know if Scott can actually be more than just a deep threat, but I know what St. Brown and Pettis are. I don't like Claypool, and I never really understood the Velus Jones pick. Based mostly on this depth chart and mid-level draft capital, I'm interested in Tyler Scott. He's currently being mocked in the 4th round of rookie drafts, near receivers that were drafted 2 rounds later than him. I'm willing to pay the price to find out. Here's the Bears' undrafted free agents. Quite the stockpile of bodies. They mean nothing to me. Green Bay Packers. In the 2nd round, the Packers took tight end Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. 6'6", 253 pounds, and great metrics. He was the 4th tight end off the board. Physically, Musgrave shows a lot of what I'm looking for in a fantasy tight end. He's a big, athletic, pass-catching option from a notable school with high draft capital investment. And the current Packers depth chart shows only Josiah DeGura and Tyler Davis at the position. No thank you. I'm in on Musgrave for Dynasty, but there is one problem. In the 3rd round, the Packers went back to the tight end well and drafted Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State. He's 6'5", 254 pounds, and has really good metrics too. Prior to the draft, I had both listed in the same tier. I like them both, and the draft capital between them is only 1 round. A lot of how they get used will come down to blocking, and I really didn't get to see that part of their game. But when it comes to pass catching, I noticed Musgrave caught the ball and was tackled immediately. A lot. If there was open space, he used that athleticism to break off big gains, but if there was a defender anywhere near him, he was going down. When I watched Kraft, it didn't matter if there was a defender. He was shedding tackles and gaining yardage after the catch. Now, maybe that was more about the level of competition, but It didn't look like it. It was pretty consistent. I think you buy into Musgrave for what he could be, and to Kraft for what he is. Rookie mock drafts currently show Musgrave going in the 3rd round and Kraft going in the 5th. Now that ADP could bounce a lot before the season, but as is, I see other skill position players I would rather have than Luke Musgrave, but not Tucker Kraft. They're both dynasty buys, but I'm more likely to end up with shares of Kraft. He's the better value and possibly the better long-term player. In between drafting tight ends, the Packers grabbed wide receiver Jayden Reed out of Michigan State. He's 5'11", 191 pounds, and ran a 4.45. To be honest, I didn't know who the hell Jayden Reed was when they took him. He wasn't on my radar. But fantasy Twitter had a real Woody for this dude. I watched some tape, and yeah, I like him. But then I thought about the Packers as a landing spot. The wide receiver room is Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Samori Toure, and friends. I like Reed for a number of reasons, but I like him more on the Packers. He's a different type of receiver than Watson and Doubs, not a redundant asset, and I think he can have an immediate impact. Reed is currently going at the back of the 2nd round in 12-team rookie drafts. That's a bit rich. You might have to make a decision between him, Josh Downs, and Rashee Rice. And you can make the case for any of them there, but for me, I'm going Reed, because he's the only one of those that I could see developing into a wide receiver 1. In the 5th round, they drafted quarterback Sean Clifford out of Penn State. Jordan Love is just getting the starting gig, and I finally saw signs last year that led me to be optimistic about that. Clifford is presumed to be his backup, and that looks like his ceiling. I don't see anything here to invest in, even in the deepest leagues. And it's a little weird that he's actually older than Jordan Love. Later in the 5th, they took wide receiver Dontayvion Wicks out of Virginia. He's 6'1", 212 pounds, doesn't have great speed, but he's athletic with an RAS of 9.17. I didn't love his tape. I'm not interested in stashing him. In the 7th, they took running back Nichols out of Central Michigan. Let's pretend for a second that he's not buried on the depth chart, because Green Bay has shown some ability to draft late-round running backs. Nichols is 5'9", 222 pounds. I couldn't find any metrics on this guy. He doesn't look fast on tape, but I did like some of what I saw. He's on my watch list for deep leagues. And again, in the 7th, at the booty of the draft, they took wide receiver Grant DeBose out of Charlotte. 6'2", 200 pounds. I love his size. He's got an RAS of 8.79. I didn't see too much tape on him. Steve Smith had some pretty nice things to say about him, though. He's just another body fighting for a roster spot. Here's their UDFA group. The only one to catch my eye was wide receiver Deuce Watts out of Tulane. His metrics were kind of meh. I just liked his tape. He's a guy I'd like to see more of. Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings took wide receiver Jordan Addison out of USC in the 1st round. He was one of the top receivers in this draft, and I think it's safe to say with that level of talent and draft capital, KJ Osborne goes right back on the shelf for fantasy. It also nukes Jalen Reagor and every other hopeful wide receiver on the team. Addison is a skinny pass-catching demon. He's likely the slot receiver. He's played all over in college, but more from the slot, and I could see that being very valuable for the Vikings. Outside of Justin Jefferson, Addison is the most valuable pass-catching option here now. I won't waste your time with a bunch of stats. He's a buy. If you're scared because he's skinny, you're gonna miss out. In the 5th round, they took quarterback Jaren Hall out of BYU, and that is very interesting to me. Everyone keeps talking about Kirk Cousins' successor, like he's a king or something. I mean, I get it, he's 34 years old. Nick Mullins is currently the backup. Jaren Hall is not their future starter. Let's just get that out of the way now. The next Vikings quarterback isn't even in the league right now. I like Jaren Hall, probably more than most, but I can't see any value for him here. Knowing that a high-value pick is coming down the pike in the next 1 to 2 years, Jaren Hall is at best a good backup option until that happens. He's mobile, the Vikings have top receiving options, that's all very valuable, but Hall would need a Cousins injury, a Mullins injury, and the Vikings not to draft anyone the next year for any sustained opportunity. There's nothing to grab hold here. In the 7th round, the Vikings drafted running back DeWayne McBride out of UAB. He's 5'10", 215 pounds. There aren't any metrics on this guy. He didn't run at the combine because he had a hamstring injury. I'm sure that, coupled with some fumbling issues and some off-the-field concerns, really depressed his stock. So let's look at the depth. Dalvin Cook is 27 years old. Alexander Madison is 24, but I don't think more than a rotational back. He's like Jamal Williams 2.0. There's also Ty Chandler, who I love, but he's also nearly 25 years old. If you have the space on your roster and the patience in your heart, Buy DeWayne McBride. He's the youngest back by 3 years. Last year, he ran for 120 or more yards in 10 out of 11 games. He had 1,700 yards and 19 touchdowns. He averaged over 7 yards per carry. He's got lead back potential, and a lot can change in his Vikings backfield within the next year. Even if it takes 2 years for Dalvin Cook to move on or decline, DeWayne McBride will still just be 24 years old. He's ideal for late round value, especially if your league has a taxi squad. Here's the Vikings UDFAs. I liked Ben Sims, the tight end out of Baylor. He's 6'5", 254 pounds, got an RAS of 8.4. He's got good tape as a big-bodied pass catcher. There might be room for him at the bottom of this tight end room, if he's any good at blocking. Detroit Lions. The Lions thumbed their noses at modern roster construction and their own needs when they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs 12th overall, stunning everyone with face holes. He's 5'9", 199 pounds after a heavy meal, and ran 4.36. Gibbs was easily the second best back in this draft, and has pass-catching upside. I don't care about David Montgomery. Is that mean to say? I mean, whatever he's doing right now, I don't care. Gibbs is a screaming buy at the 102 in every rookie draft outside of Superflex. It seemed like he was going to enter a pretty messed up situation in his rookie year, but luckily, the Lions cleared that up when they launched DeAndre Swift into space. No, I'm sorry, that was them drafting Gibbs. Kinda fucked up, really. Like, what if Mama Swift was watching?
Ooh, I wonder if they'll draft a lineman to block for my little baby boy.
Nope, they hate him. In the second round, they drafted Sam Laporta out of Iowa. He's 6'3", 245 pounds, and has great metrics. He's got an RAS of 902. It was the answer to the question, who's going to replace TJ Hawkinson? Believe me, that's Laporta. I frickin' love this dude. Allow me to explain just how much. Back before the combine, before everyone got measured and weighed, I found Laporta. While analysts and YouTubers were screaming about Luke Musgrave, I was quietly penciling Laporta in as my second or third favorite tight end in this draft class. Back pat. Now, if you've been watching these divisional breakdowns, you no doubt have noticed that I like a certain type of tight end. 6'5" is ideal. And as I said before, Sam Laporta is only 6'3". Not since my 20s has 2 inches led to such disappointment. But I haven't lowered him once. Not one bit. I don't know that he'll be a top 10 fantasy producer at the position, but I do know he's the best tight end on the Lions roster right now, and they put real draft capital into him. Brock Wright, James Mitchell, and any tight end on the Detroit Lions not named Sam Laporta can be dropped from your fantasy team. Laporta is being drafted at the top of the 3rd round in mock drafts, and that probably comes down to roster construction. Do you want a tight end who's guaranteed something this year? Or do you want to stash somebody like Roschon Johnson, who might sit for a year? In the 3rd round, they took quarterback Hendon out of Tennessee. He's 6'3", athletic as shit. He has a good arm, but it's another curious move by the Lions. Jared Goff is 28. Hendon is only 3 years younger. Could Hooker start 10 years in the NFL? Not unless Jared Goff falls off a cliff tomorrow. Hooker looks like a quality backup who could, in time, develop into another quality bridge quarterback. What, am I wrong? Does anyone think that he's going to replace Goff next year? Or the next year? I think he'd have a better chance behind Ryan Tannehill. He's a good quarterback in a bad situation. And 3rd round draft capital doesn't make me think they're moving on from Goff. I don't think Hendon is a great investment, and I wouldn't even look at him outside of Dynasty Superflex leagues. In the 7th round, they took Antoine Green out of North Carolina. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, and ran a 4.47. Now, here's where things get interesting. Because most of the time, a 7th round draft pick doesn't get a lot of opportunity for playing time. But Jameson Williams and Quintez Cephas were suspended for gambling, so there are opportunities here. The Lions receivers will be a 33-year-old Marvin Jones, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Josh Reynolds. I mean, who's fighting for the number 4 spot here? Not Khalif Raymond, because he's the slot backup. So more likely somebody like Tom Kennedy or Maurice Alexander to back up Marvin Jones or Josh Reynolds. There is not an impossible path to playing time here. Green is a decent receiver with plus athleticism. You won't even have to draft him. You could probably get him after your draft for free. The UDFA class included quarterback Aiden Martinez out of Kansas State and running back Mohamed Ibrahim out of Minnesota. We're breaking down the draft by every single division, so please, if you haven't seen the other videos yet, Go check them out. If you're new to the channel, we do fantasy football content all off-season here. And during the season, we roast the NFL. So make sure to go check out those weekly roasts as well. Thank you for watching Shut Up Football. We do appreciate it. Subscribe, like the video, say hi to your mom for me, and we'll catch you next time. Peace!
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boy.
Not my fault I can't read. Oh, it is?